Around 1200 AD, Hindu numerals were introduced into Europe, at which point they began to be referred to as Arabic numerals and began increasing in popularity. Through the years, Arabic numerals have spread across the entire globe, and since the 15th century, have become the most commonly used numeral system in the world. However, previous to its introduction in Europe, the Arabic numeral system could only be found in a few locations, and was referred to as the Hindu numeral system. At that time, there wasn't a very universal numeral system, but in Europe, the most commonly used numeral system was the Roman numeral system, which, as the name suggests, was invented in Rome. They were created around the time Queen Esther was born, about 500 BC. The modern Roman numeral system we use today is composed primarily of 7 letters: I, V, X, L, C, D, and M. I is equal to 1, V is equal to 5, X is equal to 10, L is equal to 50, C is equal to 100, D is equal to 500, and M is equal to 1000. If you're like me and have trouble remembering what each of the numerals represents, just remember that I looks like a 1, B is a 5, which is evenly divisible. Wait, no it's not. X kind of looks like 2 V's put together-ish. L is for lost in Roman numerals 50 times, C is for century, which is 100 years, D is for didn't remember 500 was a D, and M is for millennium, which is 1,000 years. If you still can't remember them, then maybe this will make it a little worse. If you need to write a number that's not one of the primary letters, like for example 149, you add larger numbers onto the end and subtract smaller ones from the beginning. So 149 in Roman numerals would be CXLIX, which reads out as 100 plus 50 minus 10 plus 10 minus 1. X is a smaller number than L, so it subtracts 10 from 50, leaving 40. I is smaller than X, so it subtracts 1 from 10, leaving 9. Both combined equals 49, and adding the C gives us 149. There is a major problem with this system though. Actually, there's far more than one. First, there's not actually one way to write numbers. 999, for example, can be written as CMX-CIX, LMV-LIV, VMIV, or simply IM, all of which equal 999 but are completely different. There are also some other ancient examples which are even more odd, like 1613 being written as XVIXIII, which literally means 1613. But it really makes no sense, unlike the standard form, which is MDCXIII. Another issue is that Roman numerals take up a lot of space. While 1000 is just a simple M, as soon as you go down one digit to 999, you suddenly have CMXCIX, which is far longer than M. And while 1000 is M, 3888 is MMMDCCCLXXXVIII. In Arabic numerals, those two numbers are the exact same length, but in Roman numerals, one is 15 times longer than the other. Sometimes you can avoid this, like 3999 for example. You could either write MMMCMXCIX, which is the standard way, or you could write MMMIM, which is not standard, but is totally legal, and much shorter. Yet another issue with Roman numerals is that there is no zero. Instead, if you needed a zero, you had to use the Latin word nolla. Eventually, someone decided Roman numerals needed a numeral for 0, and decided to use n in the place of 0. This was to represent the n at the beginning of nolla. However, the n was never really standardized into Roman numerals, possibly because n was also occasionally used to represent 90. Despite all these issues, however, there are features in Roman numerals that you probably didn't know. For example, fractions. If you wanted to write 1/2 in Roman numerals, you'd simply have to write an s. Although s technically isn't 1/2, but is instead 6/12. This is because when keeping the same base number, it's much easier to handle fractions such as 1/3 and 1/4 with 12 instead of 10. Well, 1/3 of 12 is simply 4, 1/3 of 10 is 3 never mind. While s is the base fraction, fractions below 1/2, or 6/12, were still used. Any common fractions below 1/2 were dots. So 1/12 was 1 dot, 2/12 was 2 dots, 3/12 was 3 dots, 4/12 was 4 dots, and 5/12 was 5 dots. Then beyond was of course 6/12 as s, 7/12 as s dot, 8/12 as s2 dots, 9/12 as s3 dots, 10/12 as s4 dots, 11/12 as s5 dots, and 12/12 as I, because of course 12/12 is just 1. These fractions can also be combined with other numbers, so for example 4 and 1/2 would be written as IVS. There are also some other extensions to Roman numerals, the most popular being vinculum. Vinculum allows for much larger numbers than standard Roman numerals. For example, the only way to write 10,000 in standard Roman numerals would be M. But this is obviously not very ideal, as it's very long and quite confusing. Using vinculum, however, you could write 10,000 as x with a horizontal line over it, which multiplies x by 1000. Or you could write it as m between two vertical lines, which multiplies m by 10. Both are equal to 10,000, and both have been used. Vinculum is the most commonly used extension today, but there is one more that was previously very popular. Apostrophis was also used quite often. If you were to write 10,000 using apostrophis, you'd simply have to write two sets of two C's, one being mirrored with an I in between them. Each additional set of C's raises the value by a factor of 10, though no one never really wrote anything above 100,000. It was also possible to write numbers such as 5,000 by using I and two backwards C's. 500 was just one backward C, which is most likely where we get the modern D in standard Roman numerals. There were also some variations of this which linked the C's and I together like this. Although Arabic numerals have become the worldwide standard, Roman numerals are still used quite often, like as a more interesting way of displaying a number, such as the current year, or as an additional numbered indentation in a list. But for everyday use and mathematics, Arabic numerals are far superior.